Hello, everybody. I'm Casper, and welcome to another series of interviews with wild people. The purpose of this show is to interview wild people and redefine success. We tend to celebrate people for the types of achievements they've had, for the amount of money they've made, or some amazing things they've created, which are all valid things for this person. But the purpose of this show is to celebrate people for the type of healing they've created in their lives and what types of people that they've been able to become, what types of darkness have they been able to transmute, overcome in their lives, because I believe that wisdom and that knowledge is of paramount importance on this planet in this time. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to my friend Holly Achaya.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank God I overcame all the darkness so that I could be having this conversation with you.
So I want to have you on the show because I have no idea who you are, but I have this strange sensation whenever I'm around you. I don't know if I'm attracted to you or intimidated or both, but you're doing some amazing things in your life. So I've been living here in the Valley of Vilcabamba for like 12 years, and it's had waves of cool people coming and going. And then a few years ago, along comes this amazing woman with like a tribe of like 30, 40, 50 artists and musicians and jugglers and just wild people who are learning from you on how to coach, how to be better individuals, and how to make their lives work. So I'm really curious to hear about all of this and like where does this spark of Holly come? Because you just have this like magnetism around you. People come and they want to have their lives transformed by working with you. I know you do coaching. You assist people through trauma release. You assist psychedelic journeys through various different psychedelics. You also know how to fire dance, I think. So what is it that makes Holly tick?
Oh, wow. What a question. Oh, God. I mean, I don't even know really how to ask that question. It's like asking a tree what makes you the tree that you are. I think there's certain qualities about people that they just happen. They just are. And so I guess my journey has led me through a sequence of fortunate events that I guess landed my personality in this way.
Where did your journey begin?
Where did it begin?
Tell me about the darkness.
I'll tell you about the darkness. I usually start my story in my early 20s. I was going to university. I wanted to be a doctor. I tried a lot of things, actually. I wanted to be a personal trainer. I wanted to be a kickboxer. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a dancer. I wanted to do all sorts of things, but nothing really worked. So I figured early in my 20s that the reason it didn't work is I wasn't following the system. So why not give that a go? So I enrolled into university. I went and studied undergraduate biomedical science with the hope of becoming a doctor. I threw myself heart and soul into it. I did incredibly well for the first 2.5 years. And it was like the more I went into it, the more I saw these cracks in the system. I saw the cracks in the pharmaceutical industry. I saw the cracks in the in the university system. I was watching my friends, I was watching people, and I was watching what was meant to be a health industry being really destructive. And it pulled the fabric of reality apart all around me. So I remember as I was heading into the end of my third year, I was talking about this the other day actually, I had a group of friends and some of them were like, you need to stop thinking about reality. You need to stop thinking about things, otherwise you're going to mess up your career. Stop thinking about the pharmaceutical industry. Don't think about where the money comes from. Just do your studies and keep yourself together. And I couldn't. The more influence came in kind of telling me not to look into things, the more I had to look into things. And within a couple of weeks, I just couldn't go to university anymore. I couldn't put myself through that system. And I think that was a moment that my entire life just started to crumble really, really fast. And it wasn't just university. I'd been in a series of relationships up until that point that were devastating. And I had this idea that you should learn in life and get better at things, but I seemed to be going backwards. The more experience I had, the next one seemed to be getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I thought by 23, even though I was still young, I thought, why is everything getting worse and not better? Why do I feel like my career is breaking down, not evolving? Why are my relationships getting more destructive? Why am I not learning? And, it all kind of came to this crescendo in a moment where, very eat, pray, love, I ended up sitting on the beach because I lived on the Gold Coast in Australia, sobbing, like crying my eyes out, talking to God, saying, what the hell? What the hell is going on with my life? Why can't I make it work? Why is nothing sorting itself out? And, I didn't get a direct answer, but I had this voice come into my head really strongly that said, it's time to give it up. And I said, give what up? And the voice said, everything. And I didn't really know what that meant, but it was very clear, like, everything you're doing is not working. Are you done? Are you done trying so hard to figure it out? Are you ready to give everything up? And so, it's a confusing moment, but it was such a powerful moment. And I found myself in the first moment of probably what I would call a bit of self-inquiry, just self-guided self-inquiry, sitting on the beach. And I shut my eyes and I really asked myself, why do I want to be a doctor? That was the question I wanted to dive into. And I could hear the superficial answer be because I wanted to help people. And I noticed in my life, if anyone said to me, so why do you want to be a doctor? I said, I want to help people. End the conversation, right? But I thought, no, there's more than that. Let's go deeper. So I went into a visualization and I imagined myself standing in a surgery, like in a surgery room, with the mask on, operating on people. And the first feeling was, I don't even like this. I don't like the environment. I don't really like this work. This is not who I want to be. So then I thought, well, why on earth am I working so hard to end up in this role? And the next answer came, well, because I want to become the best at it so that I can write some sort of thesis and then I can become some sort of professor and I can end up on stage teaching other people about whatever it is I'd learned. And I thought, okay, that's getting a bit closer. That feels more like me, but why? And then I got this image of standing in a room with thousands of people teaching them, which was really fun. But I was looking at the audience in this vision and they were captivated by what I was doing. And the feeling was, I really liked it. I liked that they were captivated by me. And then one person in the audience, now who knows where this vision came from, but they stood up and they came up to me and they looked me directly in the eyes. And I swear to God, the feeling was, I see you, I love you. That was it. And in this instant, and wasn't really thinking as much as I was just visioning this in a very quick amount of time, the realization was, I am trying to jump through all these hurdles to become somebody that I believe is worthy of being loved. And that just, everything shattered in that moment. And I realized, any normal person could have been like, well, if I become the best at my hospitality job, I'll be worthy of love. But no, I didn't do that. I said, I have to become the best in the hardest career, and then I need to become the best of the best of the best of the best until I am the only person at the absolute peak of whatever industry this is, and then maybe somebody will love me. And it was just such a load of bullshit. The whole thing was so obvious in that moment that has got to be the longest, hardest pathway to love. And so in that second, I realized, forget university, forget everything else that's going on in my life. I want to know what that is. I want to know what it is to truly be seen and to be loved and to be able to reciprocate that. And I knew in that moment that everything I wanted, everything I was doing between my relationships and university in my entire life was because ultimately I wanted to be loved and to be able to share that love. And so I decided in that instant, that's it. That's my journey. That is it. I rang my mom an hour later, so I'm dropping out of university. And bless her soul, she was like, oh my God, not another thing. No, what are you going to do? And I said, I want to teach. I've always wanted to teach. And she said, well, I guess we all knew that. And I said, well, thank you for letting me in on it after all the other things I've attempted to do. And she said, well, go back to university and do a diploma of education. I said, oh no, I have no desire to go to university. And she said, well, what are you going to teach? And I said, I'm going to teach about love. God, I sound like, it was the beginning of sounding like a hippie, right? She's like, you're going to do what? Someone teach about love. So the only problem is I got no idea what it is. I have no idea what this love thing is. If I'm looking at my life, to be honest, no idea. We throw the word around all the time, but looking at my life, I'm going to guess that I really have no clue. So whatever I do next, that's what I got to figure out. and there's no university degree on it, how to love and be loved. If that had been a university degree, I might have thought about it, but it didn't exist. So it became an incredibly intuitive journey from that moment forward. And I think it was that night or the next night I ended up in my own version of meditation, and I asked God, well, what do I do now? And the answer was go to India. So I did the India thing. Packed everything up, quit university, left my relationships, got fired from my job, all sorted itself out. And the next thing, I was in India by myself, 23 years old, searching for God.
So let's just back up a little bit and stay at that juncture, because I find that really fascinating and I can relate to it. I was 6 years old when I made a similar decision that I wasn't lovable and I needed to work my ass off. I'm still unwinding it. Like I'm wondering, like I still ask this question every week, like why am I doing all this crazy stuff? Because like you, I can fill my schedule with so many things and like this crazy wild projects, right? And I do that check-in, like, do I still need to do this, or is this just me, trying to get love in some really complicated way? And most of the time it is. It seems to be like a really hard pattern to quit. I remember I was 6 years old, just to tell this story. I had this girl I fell in love with. She was like 2 years older than me. She was like my best friend's sister. She was older, and it's a pretty funny story. I told him the secret. I was like, I'm in love with your sister. I'm like, don't tell her. He's like, okay, I won't tell her. Next day, we're like on the playground. She's like, so I heard you fell in love with me. And I'm like, oh no, I've been found out. She's like, well, you know what? I will love you if you take your bike and you ride up that hill. And everybody knew on the playground there's like this one impossible hill, like no kid could bike up on the hill because it was just like a 45-degree climb. And I was like, this is my chance. This is my chance to like get everything I ever wanted from the feminine. Like
I see the pattern unfolding already.
So I just like wound up on the bike and I just like got all my courage and strength, just like went for it, and of course like went up the hill and like collapsed a third of the way and fell. All the kids were laughing at me, and I just like I just like left my body, just went there like in shame and like, okay, I guess I don't get my, because she even said, and I will kiss you, and I was like, wow, it's like holy cow. So yeah, 20 years later I discovered probably like my sexuality and sensuality for the first time. After that took a while to unwind. Yeah.
And when you felt like it all just collapsed in on you and got hidden for 20 years after that moment.
Yeah, that and like birth abandonment and tons of other traumas,
yeah.
Right? So I'm curious, was it like an instant shift for you, or was it a process where you learned?
No, it was a process.
Yeah.
I think it was quite a rapid process because I did a lot of things that put me under pressure very rapidly. So I could have unwound a lot of I knew nothing about myself, to be honest. I thought I did, and that has been an interesting journey, but I very quickly realized I really didn't know a lot about myself. I had no idea. I didn't know what the word trauma was. I didn't know anything about inner child work or shadow work or spirituality or enlightenment or anything. I had been living a very, I was a teenager, I was growing up, I was going to university, I totally rejected God and spirituality, religion out of my life. I had no desire. And so when I decided, okay, I did a flip. It's like, I'm going to university to become a doctor. No, I'm not. I'm here to become enlightened. I'm off to India to find God. It was just an incredible shift in an instant. And I really applied the same level of pressure to myself in my spiritual journey as I did, my university degree. But I didn't know a lot about myself. So I ran headfirst into a lot of very challenging situations, and it was a learning of fire, to be honest. I could have unraveled pattern by pattern years upon, over years and years, like many people do, but I just wanted to pull everything up into the surface and see everything. The second I realized I didn't know myself, I became obsessed with trying to uncover everything. So it was a process, but it was a fast process, because of the pressure I put on myself. Now, did I choose that? Was that a soul agreement that I had with myself? Who knows? But yeah, process, but fast. Painful. It was painful.
What was the gnarliest part of that process?
The gnarliest part was that when I got to India, I wanted a guru. I read the books. I wanted to be Hare Krishna because that was the books that fell into my hand.
That didn't work out, obviously.
worked out for a second there. I was a Hare Krishna for a year and a half. I went all in. I really did. I wore the saris. I read the Bhagavad Gita twice. I went to the places, and I was searching for a guru. And I thought it was going to be one particular man. I'd read a bunch of his books, and I loved his work, and I was streamlined to find this man and become a disciple. And then I realized, there's a beauty in the naivety. I realized after I had put all my heart and soul into finding this man, he was one of the biggest gurus in the movement. He's got thousands of disciples. You're lucky if you ever meet him in person in your life. I did actually, but it was brief. But I met another woman on the pathway there, and she became my guru. She wasn't initiated necessarily by the movement, but there is this, I forget the word, unfortunately, otherwise I don't want to do any, there's no disrespect I have for the Hare Krishnas at all. I think every path has its beauty and its right to be here and its wisdom. But my particular experience was that I met a woman and she became my standing guru, self-chosen. And she was harsh, She was like looking into a mirror and staring at every single horrific part of myself all the time. And it was deeply confusing. And I could talk about that for a long, long time. I also don't want to do her any disrespect, because ultimately, years later, I see the gifts and the beauty in the whole interaction. But it was abusive. Physically, psychologically, mentally, the whole thing.
Yeah, let's talk about that's awesome that you bring it up, like the dark side of guru paths, and like we think it's all red bed and road, but like you realize at one point these are just like human beings all in their own processes, and we can project so much of our divinity on them.
I didn't realize that I was in an abusive relationship until 2 years later, and I went back to university to study acupuncture, and one of our classes was just 101 psychology, and they were talking about the signs. They were talking about the step-by-step process that people go through to end up in abusive relationships, and I was like, holy shit, it was textbook. Had textbook fallen into an abusive relationship.
What are the steps?
I can't remember them exactly right now, but there was a process of giving up control, isolating you from your family and friends. That had definitely happened. So it was a process of, the major one was isolating you from your family and friends, giving your power over to this person, seeing, oh God, instead of trying to think of what they were, I'll just share what happened at the beginning of our relationship, because it all happened in there. When I met her, all she needed to do, she had some insight for sure. She saw that I had a deep fear of being a bad person. I didn't even know that because I never looked into myself, but I was terrified of being a bad person. And I had been in these relationships with people where I always felt like a victim. I had relatively abusive partners in terms of physical, not necessarily physical, but definitely psychological, verbal, and I had a pattern of people cheating on me and just little bits and pieces. So I had been in these unhealthy relationships, and I felt like such a victim. And I had a group of people around me who were always like, you're so good, Holly, you're such a beautiful person, you're so amazing. All these people that you've ever dated, they're assholes, very normal, teenage societal conversations that we have with each other when we go through these situations. I get to her, and she showed me that I was equally as responsible for these horrific situations that I had been in, because one, I had a fear of being a bad person, but I so deeply wanted to be loved by the other person that I would basically sacrifice myself. Just, these patterns are super common. I would sacrifice myself to please you so that you would hopefully love me. And this was my dynamic with people. Doesn't matter what you did, I would give up whatever I needed to give up in order to please you so that you would love me. And she had this capacity to show me that my fear of not being loved was causing me to do things that was actually manipulating them to try and give me love. And in this moment of seeing that, it was like hitting on this horrific wound in this depths of my soul of, you're a bad person. That's all she needed to do. She said, you think you're good, but you're not. You're bad. And not only are you bad, you're unconscious of how bad you are. Which is actually, there's a truth in that. And I was mortified. And then she said, it's okay, I can help you, but it's not going to be easy. Perfect setup, right? Because the reason you're a bad person is because you're egotistical. You're stuck in your small self. This is your ego. And your ego wants to live. And my job is to help it basically die. and we're going to have to fight it. It was this kind of setup. We have to, you're going to fight me the whole way, and I'm here to help you liberate yourself from your ego so that you can become lightened and become a good person. And it's going to hurt the whole time, because everything I tell you to do, you're going to fight me. And when you fight me, I want you to know that's your ego. And when that happens, I'm basically going to beat you into submission in order to beat your ego out of you. Now, inside of me, I was like, I'll do anything. I want to be a bad person. If this is the pathway, if this is what it is, I'm all in, just like I am with everything. So it became a sequence of events of me having my ego beaten out of me. And it was immensely confusing, immensely, because I kind of flipped the way that I was thinking to, if it hurts, I'm doing well on my spiritual journey. If I'm in pain, if I'm scared, if I'm upset, if I'm angry, if any negative emotion kicks in, that's the ego, and we need to now fight it out of me. And this was the relationship. And of course it doesn't work. It just got darker and darker and worse and worse and worse. And, you know, for a year and a half, I tell you what, mostly what I felt was immense confusion. Immense confusion. And the people around me tried to help me out of it. My family tried to help me out of it. My friends tried to help me out of it. And the more that they tried to help me out of it, the more I thought that's their ego trying to get me out of my awakening journey because they're scared of doing the work.
Whoa.
So I need to isolate from everybody, because all that's happening is their personality is trying to trick me into staying in my ego. So I need to isolate and keep going. So I went deeper and darker and darker. And what this taught me when I came out, which is fascinating, is that when you're on the outside of someone who's going through an abusive situation, you might think that the nicest thing to do is try and help them out of it, but really you trying to get them out of it might push them into it. Because that's what happened with me. People trying to get me out of it made me go, I'm going deeper, because that I just flipped my psyche. So you have to be, the psyche's fascinating like that. I genuinely thought I was doing the right thing, and that everybody else was trying to slow my spiritual, awakening down. And my teacher, I almost said her name, but I'll try not to do that. All she needed to say is, 1 in a million people will potentially find the path. Of those people, 1 in a million might actually find a teacher. Of those people, 1 in a million might actually find a pathway. And it just got to the point where she's like, only 1 out of millions and billions of people are even, it's not even possible to become enlightened. So when I saw all the other people doing it that way, whatever that way was, I was like, well, I must be the one person, therefore it must be the hardest path. Something like this. So I got super lost into it all the way until I hit rock bottom, and I couldn't go any further in the pain and the confusion, and yeah.
I mean, that's fascinating, and I can so relate in certain parts of my journey. Never in this particular way, but it's like what you're talking about is like what it feels like to be on inside of a cult, on the inside of a mind washing, right? And like we're all in their cult of ourselves, and the cult. I was
gonna say that my cult was in my head.
Yeah, a cult of like Casper, the cult of Collie, right? And what does it take to snap out of that cult worship, right? You had at one point probably an epiphany, or just like a voice talking to you.
I'm gonna call it divinity or grace that snapped me out of it. At the end of a year and a half, I was in Indonesia. I tell this story sometimes. This is my favorite story, actually, of the whole thing. We were in Indonesia. I was on the back of a moped, and we were riding through town together, me and this teacher. We traveled for a couple of months at the very end of my journey together. That just made the pressure cooker intense. Every moment, it became hell. I was living in hell. It was the first time in my life where I started to wish that I was dead.
Can you give us some examples of like what was...
Oh, God. Just so many little things. We didn't sleep a lot. We would travel really hardcore we would travel. So we would go to bed late, we would wake up early. And I just remember one of the things, if I didn't wake up like fully awake within a single second, like completely aware, she would maybe backhand me in the face or swear at me or tell me how unconscious I was, or, so I was tired all the time, and I was a little bit dazed. And if I was dazed, I was unconscious. If I wasn't completely aware, I was unconscious. People would give us information all the time about where to stay or where to go or when a flight detail was, and I was expected to either retain all that information or write it down perfectly so that I could always say it back to her. And I forgot things all the time. So every time I forgot something, I was in trouble. Every time I was a little bit tired, I was in trouble. I got 3rd-degree burns from just swimming in the water, and I was traveling and vomiting. Everything physically, mentally, emotionally, I drained myself to complete exhaustion. I was in physical pain. We were hardcore, almost vegan, and there wasn't a lot of foods to eat there, so I was probably eating and slightly undernourished. And then what happened internally, I just got scared. To be honest, I was scared. And the more scared I became, the more jittery I became, the more I would start doing all these, I would start to pick my face. I got really, that's how I was dealing with it. And so I was picking my face. And at one moment, I remember her taking a video of me and saying, "Oh, you look like a drug addict. Look what a piece of shit you look like." Like, she would give that back to me. And then she would say things like, "Why didn't you put makeup on? Because how you look like right now is embarrassing me, I'm your teacher and this is what you're going to do." And so then I would, I'd run to the bathroom and I'd put makeup on and I would come out and I'd be sitting super jittery, and she's like, "What the fuck? It's 10 o'clock at night. Go take that makeup off. Why would you put makeup on when you're going to bed? Now your skin's going to get worse." It was like this all the time. And so I just was at the point where I'm like, I don't know what to do. I can't go left. I can't go right. I'm going to mess it all up. And then I just made more and more mistakes. And the more mistakes I made, the worse it got. I can even feel it in my body talking about it because, I didn't tell a lot of people about everything when I came back, because it was every minute of every day for a long time. And there was guilt about telling other people, because what if I was wrong? What if I'm talking about my guru like this, That was part of it as well. You don't talk about your guru like this. Your guru is God. And so for me to even think about her in a disrespectful way was blasphemous. The worst thing you could do was ever to disrespect the guru. And towards the end, I was just getting angry. There was anger. I was getting this waves of anger, and I was trying to push it down, get out of here. And at the very end, when we're on this moped, at the end of this whole saga of things, including me forgetting, I was a real mess. I'm not going to say that I wasn't. I became a real mess. And it became comical. I'll tell you about the moped in a second. Comical to the point where I even remember we were walking in a town and it started pouring rain. Like, this is the situation in just an absolute nutshell. And it's pouring rain. And I can't remember where our hotel is. So she's getting saturated. I'm feeling terrible because I can't remember where the hotel is. So I try and make it better by taking out this umbrella and opening it up and putting it on, like holding it over her. And all of a sudden, the umbrella somehow flips upside down. It blows inside out. It captures all this water and then drops it straight on her. Just like, it was a total comedy show. And that's what it ended up becoming. Didn't matter what I did. Everything made everything worse. To the point where I wanted to die. I really wanted to die. I became, actually the moped was just before this. The anger started to brew, and the last straw was we were on the moped together. I couldn't hear her speaking. She was really angry. She thought I was deliberately ignoring her, so she started to just verbally vomit this string of swear words at me that I'd heard before, but I'd had my last straw. And I felt the heat. It just started coming up, and I remember thinking, "Oh no, don't do it. And the heat was just rising and rising, and I could feel it came out of my mouth, and there was a part of me being like, "She's gonna kill you. Like, don't do it." But I couldn't stop it, and I just screamed, "I get it." And she turned around and she said, "What did you say to me?" I said, "I get it. I am stupid. I'm fucked up. I'm dumb. I'm never going to be enlightened in this lifetime. I've had enough. I'm done. I'm a piece of shit. I take it, I'm done." And she slowed the moped down. She stood up off it. She pushed us off the back. It drove underneath and she crashed it. I had the helmet on, which was I guess, lucky.
Drove underneath what?
The moped drove out underneath us.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of drove out underneath us. We both fell off the back, kind of stumbled off the back. Oh, God, a sight for sore eyes. And, it drove off and it kind of crashed on the side, and she turned around, and I don't remember exactly what she said, but what I heard was, "I'm going to kill you." And the feeling was, I don't give a fuck anymore. Do it. Like, I'm done. And she came up and she started banging into my head, and I remember it busted my lip a bit. I got a black eye, and I didn't care. I was so scared of being hurt. But in the moment that this all just happened, I couldn't have cared less. I felt free in a weird way. And eventually, this ended, and she stood back and she's looking at me and I'm looking at her. I'm total mess, totally lost. To add to the terribleness of it, I had a shaved head and tried to bleach it blonde. It looked terrible. My skin was all beaten up, and there I am standing there, and she says to me, "Have you always been this psychopathic?" And I was like, I remember saying to her, "I don't know. You're my guru." Like, the whole point of this entire thing is that you know who I am and I don't know who I am. So you're meant to be telling me. I'm surrendering my whole life over to you so you can tell me who I am. That was the feeling. So I said, "I don't know." And she said to me, and I believed she was God, by the way. I believed she was enlightened. So when she said these words, they were very powerful to me. She said, "You are so psychopathic that you have even tricked me, God, into believing you are a good person. That is how demonic you are." And that went into my psyche, I was like, oh my God, I'm actually the devil. And I've tricked myself into believing I'm a good person because that's what the devil does. And I don't even know it. So I was completely like, this is the bottom of the bottom of the bottom in my psychological, journey. And after, I didn't know what to do with that information. And so I didn't know it at the time, but I completely disconnected probably my soul from my body. I went into total apathy. I couldn't feel a thing. It just went gone. Couldn't feel a thing. We were in Raja Ampat at the time, which is the most biodiverse, beautiful diving site in the world, and I couldn't feel a thing. And it was trippy because I'm sitting there and got sharks and octopus and colors that you've never seen before, and postcard picture perfect sunsets and everything, and I was sitting there and I was out cold numb, absolutely numb. And I was with her for another week after that. She told me she would leave me, which was, I guess, divine grace. She said, "I'm leaving you." She cut me off from a couple of other students that she had who were my only lifeline. So she was gone, they were gone, everyone in my life was gone. She got on a plane, she flew back to where she was from, and I thought I would feel relieved. I felt nothing. I almost felt sad for a second that she was leaving. I remember sitting in Indonesia in the airport, just being like, I don't know what just happened to me. I don't know if I'm who I am, where I am, not happy, not sad, not here, nothing, just a shell of a human, completely confused. With a couple of last little drops of wisdom from her, which were, if you ever cry in your life ever again, know it's out of self-pity. If you ever try and help somebody spiritually ever again, know that you're just degrading their spiritual awareness because you're basically a demon. And so she said, if you go back and you go back to your life and you go and reach out to your family or your friends, you're going to degrade every single one of them spiritually because you are one of the most unconscious humans I've ever met. So I was stuck in this rut of, God, if I reach out for help, I'm only going to hurt all the people around me because I am...
Do you still believe there at this point?
Huh?
You still gave
so deeply.
some power at this? Wow.
So deeply. I mean, that was where I was at. But the relationship did end. Did I do it? Some people are like, congratulations, you ended the relationship. I'm like, did I? Maybe when I stood up off the moped, I ended the relationship, but she made it very clear that she was leaving me, I wasn't choosing to leave. And then, step by step, I had to unravel that. I had to unravel all of it. And that's what gave me so many of the tools that I help other people with, because I had to unravel this incredible, colossal mess inside of me. And it was a step-by-step process. That's when I learned about trauma. That's when I learned about abuse. That's when I learned about unhealthy relationships. And I developed this incredible passion for abuse in the spiritual field, like manipulation of spiritual concepts, because it was so easy to take truthful concepts and flip them in a way that caused me almost to destroy myself. And I became incredibly passionate over the years to see spirituality, and especially the teachings, like a knife that can either destroy or can liberate or heal. And it became this incredible passion inside of me. Wow. after that experience.
This is the first time I hear this story. Thanks for sharing. I mean, that's kind of the point of this whole thing.
Yeah, well.
Bringing it all out, like, helps me understand you a lot
yeah,
better.
I didn't tell... When I came back to Australia, it was interesting. I thought people would hate me. They didn't. They loved me, and that was confusing. my friends, my family, they kind of gathered really close around me, and they nurtured me, and I didn't think I was worthy of it. It was very moving, very touching, and I did unravel a lot of the pain quite quickly. I don't know what I was going to say. I just got lost in that for a second because it was really beautiful. You know, I came back and I thought everyone would be like, you're crazy, and they weren't. They were just like, are you insane? You're beautiful. You know, you're one of the kindest, most caring people. I'm like, no, I'm not the devil. They're like, you're ridiculous. You know, these are the kind of...
How wild, first of all, that like you created this experience for yourself because you wanted to be free. You wanted to... Your intention was, I'm going to learn about love.
Yeah.
Right? And like Osho says, you know, like love... It's like I'm butchering it right now. This thing was like hate and love are both sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Right. The self-hatred, like it can like propel us to want to love ourselves more or to do all this crazy stuff to be loved. Right. And like you went on this crazy journing doing my equivalent of like riding up that impossible hill, like a year and a half of like being called a demon and being beaten psychologically, emotionally, physically. Congratulations for creating that. So where did it go from there?
Well, I came home, and I remember, you know, a couple of weeks after I was home, I got in the shower and I got out and I had my towel and I was trying to dry myself, and I heard her voice in my head saying, you can't even dry yourself properly. You're that disgusting and that unconscious. You don't even know how to shower. And it was so intense in my head. I couldn't turn left. I couldn't turn right. I was at my sister's house. I felt bad for being there. And I sat down and I thought, right, I got two options. I either take my life or I figure a way out of this. So I thought about taking my life. And then I thought, I can't, because I believe in reincarnation, or I believe that I take myself wherever I go. There is no evidence in my life that wherever I go, even when I die, I'm not going to just meet myself again. And I'm terrified of pain. How am I going to kill me? I couldn't split my wrists. I thought about putting my head in the oven. Like I went through this series of things and I was like, I'm never going to do that to myself. So I felt so pathetic. I was like, I can't even take my own life. I'm too scared to do that. I'm a shriveled up little idiot who can't even muster the courage to die.
Do you feel like that fear and this sensation of being a pathetic, worthless human being, that this experience also amplified? But even before that, do you feel that was at the root of like trying to get love?
Probably.
Yeah?
Yeah. I came into this world small. You know, I had problems with my stomach. I was very thin when I was little. I was tiny, and you know, I've talked to my mom a little bit about who I was. My upbringing was quite beautiful. You know, it was very confusing for people. Like, why did you do this when you're, you know, there's no sexual abuse or there's no abuse, you know, blatant abuse in any of my childhood. I lived with my grandparents, my parents. They loved me deeply. I had a good relationship. So a lot of people were completely confused as to how did I create that, and they couldn't find anything major. I understand it now. I didn't then. But I think that looking at my mom, looking at my upbringing, looking at what happened in my body, I always felt weak. I always felt less than. I always felt worthless. I never felt good enough. Just, you know, patterns that so many of us had. I didn't feel like I was successful. I struggled with a deep sense of worthlessness. And so it was the absolute manifestation of my worthlessness in like mirrors every direction I looked. And I guess I wanted to see it. And so, yes, I realized that around here, that feeling of being pathetic and tiny. My sister's boyfriend said, I have a book for you called Theta Healing. I think that you should read it. So I was like, right, not going to kill myself, don't know how. Read through that in a day. Realized that belief systems create your reality. I also listened to a Bashar video around the same time, and he basically said, if you have a negative reaction to someone calling you something bad, I'm butchering this as well, but if you have a negative, like a contractual reaction in your body to someone saying something negative to you, then some part of you believes it. So I just started going back through a year and a half with her and thinking of all the things she called me. And I felt, okay, does that make me feel something? Yes. So I wrote it down. I must believe that. You're pathetic. Oh yeah, I feel that. Must believe that. You're a piece of shit. Oh yeah, I feel that. I'm a piece of shit. So I just started writing down everything she had said to me that I could feel physically in my body, and I had pages and pages and pages of, you're a pathetic piece of shit, you're a worthless idiot, you're a demonic human being, you only hurt people, pages of it. Put it together in a bundle, rang the local Theta Healing healer and said, can I come for a session? Of course, she said, come. So I came, I gave her my papers. She's mortified, she was looking through these pieces of paper and she says, what is this? And I said, this is what I think about myself. Can you help? And she said, she was Japanese and she was just like shocked, but at the same time, she was like, okay, let's get to work. Mm-hmm. So we started. And that is where the beginning of my journey began. And I started to learn about belief systems, and I started to learn about the physiology, and I started to learn about trauma, and then I wanted to learn about emotional release work. And then I just went on a sequence of trainings, and I was studying to be an acupuncturist through this. And I wanted to know, how does the mind work? How does it affect our physiology? Is it the truth? How do you discover the truth? And that's where it began. So yeah, I started to slowly pull my way out of it. And eventually, like skipping forward, 6 years, and you can ask me any other questions, but I realized that on a higher level, whether it's true or not, it feels true to me, that this woman was a friend on a soul level who had the courage and the audacity to stand in my face and reflect everything that I didn't want to see back to see about myself back to me without letting me have a break. And it changed my goddamn life in every sense of the word. And I've even had moments, in deep meditations or, some medicine ceremonies where I'm sitting with her sobbing out of gratitude. Like, thank you for doing this for me. What a role to play. I mean, she didn't have an easy life either. Her personality was intense. So
what was the thing that was the last thought? The intense...
No, I was just saying that I've had experiences since where deep down I felt incredibly grateful for the situation, and I made a couple of internal promises to myself. One of them being, if I ever do talk about this situation, I want it to be shared in such a way that I don't make the people listening angry or feel angry towards her. Because that happened for a while. I'd come back, I'd share this situation, and again, people would say, oh my God, you're such a victim, what an asshole. And I thought, I'm going to heal my relationship with her so deeply that if I ever tell the story and I tell it all the way through, other people would be able to see, wow, what a gift. What a gift in what she did. And more than hating or being angry at her, it was a feeling of, thank you, or I'm going to send her a lot of love for the role she played, the role she's playing. Everyone plays a perfect role in humanity. We need our dark mirrors in order to see some of ourselves. So I'm deeply grateful for all of it. I just wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't have gone through that. In saying that, I don't necessarily encourage people to go and find the hardest, most horrific pathway that they can to become healed. I think there's other ways, but that was just what I did for myself.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, life will bring it to you, right? One way or another, it brought it to you.
Yeah, I wasn't seeking pain. Yeah. I wasn't seeking consciously for the path to be hard, but it was just internal, I guess, a lot of internal beliefs about how I should do it, what spirituality is. I mean,
do you see that a lot of people on this path, that people who are intending to be healers, intending to help others, that it's almost like mandatory that they go through pain and intensity. I can relate to this myself, because many years ago I made a decision, like, okay, I'm going to go coach, I'm going to be a trauma person, because I had like a session with someone to help me with my trauma. I was like, I can learn this, I can help so many people. I just started going out there, and life's like, oh, you want to know about trauma? Here you go. And I just was flung into like the deepest pain ever for months, and like you, I started thinking about taking my life and thinking it was all over, and that's what actually brought me down to Peru to do Bufo, and start to actually learn what it actually means to feel grief at a deep level, what it actually means to lose deeply. Like a lot of us, I think we've lived painful lives, but we haven't really felt the depths of pain of what's really possible. I'm sure there's more possible than that, but you come out of that and you can actually then be of service. You can relate.
We're funny in our minds, because I think that a lot of us think, especially even as they're listening to stories like this, the mind's like, oh, how do I set the path up so I can become that?
Okay, great. Now, so I'm just going to get into some abusive relationships.
Have some abusive relationships. I don't know, yeah. Give up all your things, go to India, whip yourself, do the things. But life is unfolding your path for you perfectly. And some people's paths just are not that painful. They don't need to be. You don't need to evolve painfully. But if that's the way that you're doing it, that's the way whatever it is, it's the way it's meant to be. It doesn't need to be painful. So I'm definitely not advocating for, if you want to become liberated, go and find a painful path. I've had visions even inside of myself of past lives where I've been the monk hitting myself, whipping myself, trying to whip things out. I've seen a slew of lifetimes where I'm an intense human and I put myself under immense pressure searching for liberation. And I have a feeling some of it just came through, it just came through. You should starve yourself, you should beat yourself, there's a lot of religious, teachings around sacrifice of self. And what I see now is it's just a misunderstanding. There is a certain level of sacrifice, but we sometimes misunderstand what that really looks like. It doesn't necessarily mean castrate and beat and brutalize yourself until you no longer feel the attachment of the material world. It's a very brutal way to try and reconnect with God. It's such a brutal way of reconnecting with God.
It's a very clever construct too,
it's
right?
A clever
like
construct. What
you just designed and specified in the very beginning, like coming back to that, like this thing of like when you're in an abusive relationship, from the outside, you can even convince yourself that those helping you are trying to pull you away from it. It's like you can really contort your mind into believing that like pain is the path.
Oh,
and that
yeah.
suffering is. I could relate to your story also. And many years ago, I had this similar idea that like I needed to attain enlightenment. I needed to become free because I had pockets and glimpses of just the most beautiful, beautiful embodied experience of oneness. And in that place, a place which I now know more and more accessibly with every single breath. But back then it was like, well, I need to get back there because I didn't get it or something, and it was painful too, because you when you have these glimpses of oneness, maybe you can relate, but you don't really get what's going on, and then it kind of like go away and you still go back to the sense of being separate. It's so painful because you're like, well, that was better than this, so I got to get back there. And then the psyche can be so tricked into like, well, obviously something's wrong with me, right? And for me it was like this sense of I have to renounce my attachment to the world, right? And I have to it's almost like I have to prove that I'm not attached to anything in some certain way. And sometimes it got to the point where like, well, if I'm in a relationship, well, I need to let it go. I can't even let myself enjoy this love, or I don't know if this is making
It's so unconscious.
Yeah,
you gotta let go of
right
that.
Yeah, how could you enjoy this? Right, this is it's unreal. So you have to let it go.
You are enjoying the illusion.
Oh, it's illusion.
You want to be in the matrix. You don't want to wake up.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Yeah.
The psyche is phenomenal. It's phenomenally interesting, and when the books say it can be your worst enemy or your best friend, that really that goes to the extreme on both sides. The depths of human suffering is psychological. It's a psychological game internally. It's how you're seeing or viewing whatever's happening to you, and what meaning you're giving that. And you can come up with a nightmarish meaning about yourself, and it will create a nightmarish experience internally. And that's the gift of the psyche. It's an incredible aspect of consciousness that has control of a lot of people in some ways.
So let's talk about the light now a little bit. Like so here you are in Vilcabamba in Ecuador many years later. Sun is shining. You're doing awesome stuff. You're still learning lessons, right?
Yeah.
But I see you as a shining light, here in the valley, and bringing so much life and joy in the world. Has that come also through a process after that?
Yeah, it's the same process.
Yeah.
It didn't all of a sudden be like, now we're going to stop and do something different, become the light. It was incremental realizations and shifting in perspective.
What was different from being beaten every day and told you were a demon to what you were doing now? What did you start doing?
Oh, goodness. A lot of things, a lot of the things that I teach now. So, as I said, I did a lot of belief system work, started to understand how your beliefs create your reality. And then I was able to see my beliefs and realize that's why my reality was that way. Came across Osho's work, did a lot of dynamic meditation and a lot of somatics and trauma release and breath work. And it was never, it's been little sparks of realization along the way. For me, it wasn't just all of a sudden everything's changed. It was a slow rearranging of the way I saw the world. And it was a mix of experiences and things that I was reading and listening to. I changed my teachers. I started listening to different things. It was my observation of the world. It was plant medicines. That threw a huge... it opened a huge doorway for me working with the plants. Going back and listening to Eckhart Tolle, finding Papaji and Ramana Maharishi's self-inquiry and starting to have glimpses of a non-dual space where all the thoughts and all the ideas just disappeared into nothingness. I would listen to Cryon talk about the difference between the devil and God and how it's all just constructual from our own psyches. And so many things started to pull at everything. And yeah, it was like a system changed, and slowly I'd have to go through each file and be like, wait a minute, let's look at this. No, get rid of that. I can see. And I started to realize I had control over what I thought and what I believed. And it has been 100 things that I've done. I recognized early on that a lot of people found a path. And they'd be like, this is the thing that fixed me. I found Vipassana. It did it. It changed my whole life. I found the tapping. It did it. It changed my whole life. I found this thing. I never found one thing. I found 100 things. And I had to do one at a time. And at different times through my journey, things would turn up. I had to do 100 things. And slowly, it was like a puzzle started to come together. And I started to see my own, my own creation. Mm-hmm. And I started to see that no one was doing it to me, Yeah. Never, not for a second. Every second of it was created by me.
Yeah.
But
you were unplugged from it. Like what I really hear is that moment on the bike was the spark, because you just like, I don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah, that was one moment for sure.
But I think that's like the seed of the love and compassion there, because up until then, it's like you can feel the pit of like the darkness, and then you just like have a reaction to it, right? Mm-hmm. So you trigger this in me, so I must be terrible, right? I will try to follow through with this crazy impossible bike up the hill because I need to get rid of this feeling, then I'll be better. And you in that moment said, I don't give a fuck.
I don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah, I'm not gonna keep abusing myself for love, right? Mm-hmm. How freeing.
The trippiest thing is I didn't know it at the time, but I gave up. Call it surrender.
Yes.
I took my power back, I said no more. I set a boundary. I set, it was surrender and it was control at the same time. It was taking control and surrendering. It was this beautiful moment of self-love for her and for me. And I didn't know that till later because I said no more abuse. And I thought for a long time that was the core root of my disrespect for her, because how dare you stand up to the teacher? Years later, I realized it was the exact opposite. It was a moment of taking my power back, and it was absolutely love, absolutely for myself and for other. And I'd also, every one of those limited beliefs we have about spirituality, I've believed them all. I've gone all the way in there. You shouldn't ever say no, If you're completely love and light, you would just accept everything as it is. Well, I realized that no can be very loving. Deeply, I realized that in every cell of my being, that sometimes love says no more. That's it, I've had enough. And it comes through strong, and it comes through grounded, and it's not aggressive, but it's just no more. Not for you, not for me. And it took years to realize that wasn't arrogance. Years to realize that wasn't arrogance. And so, my journey's been one of feeling completely pathetic and weak to feeling strong and just balanced in some ways. Not always, I'm human. But finding that balance of strength and surrender and feeling into other people and, an entirely different understanding of love than what I had when I was 23 years old sitting on that beach. But at least I had the wisdom at that moment to know I didn't know. and slowly feeling it, putting it together, watching things.
I love what you said about the no.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law wrote this article. It was called "No as an act of creation." That no can actually be a force of creating something new.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that played out in not just my relationship with her, but my relationships with people, my family, my friends, my lovers, my work. No was a blasphemous word. So unspiritual until one day I realized it wasn't. Oh my God. Best day ever. Best day ever.
So what are you doing now? How are you helping people? Tell us about what your work is for those who might be interested in jumping on the Holly train.
Kind of like I just shared with you, there wasn't one pathway for me. I really saw that a mix of teachings, certain teachings, experiences, tools, methods, that there was a whole ingredient list of things that helped me. And I now share every single tool that I found for myself that I can with other people. What I did do is I attempted to put it in a bit of a journey, but I also understand that people go in different ways. So I almost see that everything I've got is like a tool belt of infinite different tools and methods. And I often share with our facilitators that you become like Harry Potter or Hermione from Hogwarts. And life is knowing when to pull that wand out and cast that spell. And not in a... I can hear some people being like, cast a spell, oh, that's black magic. No, it's more about knowing in the moment what thing is the most beneficial for the person sitting in front of you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
So what's Holly's method? I don't have a method. I have numerous tools. My method would be to be present as much as possible and see what happens and see what comes through, what tools and methods. I often think that the more clear you are, the more universe will work through you and say, look, you've learned how to use that method. Let's pull it out now because it would be very helpful for this person in front of you. Let's give it a go. Let's see if this story or this teaching or this method or this way of looking at things will help that person click and go, oh my God, I get it. And I can see it in people's faces. They go from feeling stuck and constricted and scared, and all it is a shift in perspective. It doesn't matter how it comes about, as long as it's not abusive. I don't advocate for abuse. But you see people go, oh, fuck, I get it. And it's a moment of clarity and freedom and relaxation. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's too complicated to say it's my A plus B equals C method. This is the Holly train. I've got a whole train station. Which train would you like to get on?
If you were in Hogwarts, who would you be right now? Like what if you taught a subject in Hogwarts, what would that be?
It's funny because it's like, who would I like to be, and then who am I really like? In some strange way, I take on. I could be Professor Snape. The dark arts. I haven't seen Harry Potter for a while, but I've got a bit of everything. I'm definitely nuts. I'm crazy. I've got some wild, crazy ways. So who's the one with the googly goggles?
So wait a minute. Before this interview, you were like really certain that you weren't wild, but you're switching your story now. So what's going on?
Well, I got a bit of everything.
Yeah, okay. Because you were like, she was literally like, why do you want to interview me this?
I'm not crazy.
I'm not a wild person. Like I'm quite boring.
That's my joke. I'm quite colourful.
Yeah.
I shift and I change. So I'm a bit of all sorts of things.
I mean, do you have more time for the interview? You wanna
Sure.
keep going? Because the reason why I wanted to have you on is obviously to hear the story, but like also like to tap into this essence of like what does it take to live a wild life, right? Because I know I live a pretty wild life, probably too wild. I'm trying to. It's only gonna get wilder with everything I'm doing. But I see that in you. I see that. This like, let's fucking go for it, like all the way. You don't just like, okay, I'm not half in. No, I'm gonna go all the way. And even if you fucking abuse me, like I'm on this. I'm all into till the train leaves. And I've done that a lot in life. And I think I only have like two speeds, like nothing or go all the way. And when I'm like halfway, I struggle because that's not when I don't feel good. So I don't really know what kind of question this is, but were you always like that, or like what makes you wild?
I've always been rebellious, but I don't think I was just rebellious for the sake of being rebellious. there was something that came in with me that questioned everything, always. Like, is this the right way? Why are we doing this? This can't be it. There has to be more than this. That was the feeling. This can't be all it is. I refuse to believe that this mediocre, half-assed life that feels like half anxious and requires me to take medication, that cannot be the peak of human experience. I refuse to believe that, even if everyone around me is like, well, that's normal. That's just the way it is. People do this. They're normal. They get a job. They live half an anxious life. They take their medication. They drink their beer. They watch their TV. They make their money. This is good. Like, to have people say, what's wrong with that? And I'm like, that cannot be it. There's no way. So something was inside of me, and it felt like a burning fire to find an answer. That's all I know. It was burning inside of me. And even as a young person, I went through different jobs. I was searching for something. Like, is this it? I felt like there's a little book my dad used to read me saying, "Are you my mother?" And it was the bird that fell out of a nest and then went around talking to other animals and machines, searching for its mother. And so I felt like that. I felt like I was out of my nest, and I was roaming around asking life, like, is this it? Are you my mother? Are you my mother? Are you my home? Where's home? And I just couldn't rest. I couldn't. Where did it come from? I don't know. Did it cause me to go on a wild path? Yeah, because that's the path that unfolded. Was I trying to be wild? No. I was trying to find home. And, ayahuasca turned up. Is it a way to find home? Yeah, let's do it. I want to know who I am. Okay, does that cause me to do what seems to be wild things? Yeah. But it just happened. Through my journey, do I find myself in India traveling around and it seems so wild? Yeah, but it wasn't that I was trying to be wild. It was that I was trying to find home. I even feel like the emotions, it's so deep for me of like, I want to be connected with God. I want to be home, and I'm not sad about it. I am home. And through that, I came to this deep understanding that I never left. God's right here. I am that. I am. And I wanted to be with myself this lifetime. I didn't know that's what it was until 10 years of, I don't give a fuck what I have to do. Where is God? Who is it? Is it separate from me? Am I that? And I don't care about being wild. I don't care about being peaceful. I don't care what I need to be. I'm just going home, and then I'm going to be there. And, it's been interesting because I thought, maybe I've got to become a Buddhist. Maybe I got to become a, Hare Krishna. Maybe I've got to do this. Maybe I've got to be vegan. And I actually realized on the path, a lot of it was to break every idea I had of what I needed to do to be connected with God. And I needed to let all of that go and realize, no matter what the fuck I do, I'm loved. I guess that was the thing that I figured out through this whole thing. I can eat the steak and be loved. I can make a mess. I can be unconscious. I can be that messy person that I was with my teacher, and God still loved me. That's what I realized through this whole thing, no matter where I went. And I guess that was the thing. I needed to go to all those edges to become the worst version of myself, to eventually realize God was always with me and loved me just as much through the whole thing. And I've seen that again and again and again. And it doesn't matter what I do. That is what I am. And if I want to take it one step deeper, it's not that God loves me. I love me. I loved me through every moment of that. I was with me the whole time. And really, there was a part of me the whole time that was like, I fucking adore and love what you are, at your lowest, at your highest, at your most peaceful, at your most insane. Couldn't do anything wrong. So I learned that. I can't get it wrong. Doesn't matter. I want other people to know that too, because people are wandering around and they're so convinced they're getting everything wrong and that there's a right way and they've got to make the right choices and they've got to be the most spiritual or the best person or do the right thing so that they will be loved by the universe. And it's the greatest illusion and lie of all, because you're loved every second no matter what you do, in your delusion, in your happiness, in your sadness, in your everything. I was in an ayahuasca journey, my first ayahuasca journey. I was in the bathroom, I was vomiting, I was kind of emaciated, I was lying on the floor, and I remember, 10 years into my journey, I said, I I'm in ayahuasca and I'm still searching for you, God. You know, that was the feeling. This is about 5 years ago. And this voice came in and said, okay, I have a question for you. I was like, what? He said, well, what would you have God do other than what God is doing right now? And I saw myself holding myself like on the ground in this bathroom. People were shitting and vomiting, and it was like, it was the representation of everything where you, gross, you know, God's not going to be in the floor of a bathroom in an ayahuasca ceremony. And I just went, holy fuck, God's right here. Of course I am. Where do you think you're going to find God? I'm like on the bathroom floor, vomiting, when people are shitting next to me and moaning and crying, all the things. And this is where God is. I'm like, I'm meeting this. That was one of the first moments where I'm like, I am meeting God. And of course I am here, because it's not just when you look perfect sitting in some samadhi state of being that you meet God. God's with you all the time. All the time. And that's what I realized. So, yeah. I don't care about being wild. I just care about being myself. Maybe in another reality, wild is normal. Yeah. Calling it wild because it's what, against the norm? I'm actually pretty, in my world, normal.
Thank you. Well said. Yeah, I think that's the essence of it. Yeah, the wild is the side effect of going home. Yeah, and it's just normal, because I think like the normal, what you call normal in the Matrix, and that regular existence of, I mean, let's not shit on the regular existence. Maybe some people have totally awesome like regular existences, but
what is regular? What's wild?
Yeah, I felt the same way of like, just I can't be here. I need to find what it is. This can't be life. Like it has to be from here. I have to be fully juiced up, and I'm willing to do crazy shit to fucking get there. You know?
That's why I was kind of joking with you at the beginning. I said, what makes you think I'm wild? You know?
Yeah, well, I knew you were.
I said that because I know that we have a perception of wild. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's just my life. Mm-hmm. One of the things I talk about a lot lately in our classes is look at nature. Beautiful, perfect, messy, wild, brutal, gorgeous, stunning. Nature. Unpredictable, predictable, all the things. So if we look into nature, do we call it peaceful? Do we call it wild? Do we call it dynamic? Do we call it still? The more you look at it, the more it's all of it. And that's what we are. Because we're not separate from nature. We are the wild unknown that we look out at every single day. And it's all of it. So is it wild? Sure. Is it normal? Yeah. Because this is what it is. Mm-hmm. This is it. It's all of it and none of it. It just is what it is. And it is fucking perfect.
What's your greatest joy right now?
Working with other people. Mm-hmm. Doing a mixture of meditation and guided processes and self-inquiry and parts work and working with other people. That's just filling my heart and soul deeply, deeply, deeply right now. And my personal life with Tali and my baby, that feels like a whole adventure that has only just sprouted. So I'm very excited and just, being with other people, with other people on this pathway home.
Oh, if someone's watching this right now and they're in a place where they're looking for activation to come to this ridiculous place of self-acceptance, what would you tell them, and how can they find your work and connect with you?
I've always said to people, follow your heart, so if something feels exciting, if that thing inside of you is moving, you listen to it. So if that is, you want to go look at my website, sure. If you want to find a way to contact me, sure. If you want to go do anything, if there is this burning feeling inside of you that feels like I need to go in that direction, the only thing I'll ever say to people is follow that, because that will guide you anywhere you're needing to go. And the more, we can call it the heart's compass, but the more you listen to something, that unseen voice inside of you, the more it will guide you on the most magical mystery tour of your entire life. So you can look up my website. If that's the thing, that's the most exciting next step.
post a link down below.
Post a link down below. Yeah, we have people coming in from all over the world. I love it. I work with people from all over the world, and we do a lot of online work, and we're moving into. I'm super excited. I'm slowly moving back into in-person work and retreat work. So, yeah, it's all on the website.
Any last words?
Oh God.
No,
I do. I have a last word. I'm saying oh God because it's really funny. When I began my spiritual journey, and I don't know if this is a joke or not, but the very first thing that happened when I met the Hare Krishna is they handed me a piece of paper. They said, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. So for some reason, any last words, that came into my head. But I think that it's a joke. The underlying feeling is follow your heart. That was the thread that I grabbed onto, and I just started going with it. And it wasn't necessarily about chanting Hare Krishna and being happy, but it was the little thread that came from the universe and said, go this way. So my last words is follow that thread. Maybe it is chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Maybe it is whatever it is for you. Whatever that thread is, grab on and hold on and go. Go, do it, do the thing. Find yourself. Be yourself. Thank you, Casper. This has been fun.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you.
You're welcome.